When what worked stops working, I point purpose-driven leaders to Prolific, the growth firm. They turn plans into results with full-service marketing and strategy, focused on outcomes, not vanity metrics. Head to prolifichq.com to learn more.
Do I just make this radical shift and choose football after 1 year experience over a year ago in high school? And that was pretty scary to me, and it was pretty uncomfortable. And that's why I did it. Because I think we should challenge ourselves, and I think that we should pull ourselves outside of our comfort zones. And that ended up making all the difference to me.
Hi, I'm Dave Neff, host of Talent Scout. On this show, we shine a light on Indiana's next generation of leaders who are making a difference in business, community, and civic life. These are real conversations about purpose, mentorship, and building a future that matters. Join me as we invest in leadership that lasts. All right, welcome back to another episode of Talent Scout with Dave Neff. My guest today is Spencer Shrader. Spencer is place kicker for the Indianapolis Colts. We're thrilled to have him on the show. And in full transparency, we are taping the day after the Indiana Hoosiers have just become national champions in college football. And as somebody who spent a year of your college career playing at a fellow Indiana college, Notre Dame, thoughts, reactions? Did you ever see this day coming?
No, I didn't. Absolutely incredible story. I think one of the coolest sports moments that we'll ever get to witness unfolded in front of us. And so really cool to see what they've done over those past 2 years. And I think especially for me, having been in the college football system, you have a greater respect for a coach turning a program around in 2 years and what you have to build from the top down in order to make that a thing. So yeah congrats to them.
Yeah, it's as a lifelong resident of Indianapolis, it is a bit surreal. But even despite what I've spent the last couple of years doing, helping the Boilers on the NIL front, thrilled for the Hoosiers, thrilled for the state, and Kurt Signetti seems like the real deal.
He does,
and excited for what's ahead for that program. Anyways, back to regularly scheduled programming here, Spencer. This show's all about just learning about up-and-coming leaders and their stories. You've obviously got a unique one, being an NFL player, a place kicker. So we'll get into that in a bit. But, a lot of people may not realize that you were born and raised here until you were a teenager. So talk to us about your childhood and what it was like, where you grew up, your family, those sorts of things.
Yeah, I literally grew up right down the road, Westfield, Indiana. That was home for me.
Wow.
And it was awesome. I loved it. It was such a blessed experience growing up in Centennial, and I had so many good buddies I was running around with. I was thinking about it recently. I think everyone thinks that when they grew up, that was like the golden era. Back when we didn't have screens, and for me growing up like 15 years ago, it wasn't even that long ago, but that's kind of how I think. I grew up and I'm like, man, I just had really authentic friendships, and we just always had something to do, playing outside, playing sports, playing whatever sport, and riding scooters and bikes around the neighborhood and playing airsoft and just causing mischief. And, it was a really cool childhood. Feel very blessed to grow up in Westfield.
Yeah. Maybe talk to us about, first 13 years of your life, I believe, in Westfield before you moved away. But what was a shaping force or two from your upbringing that has really kind of molded you into who you are today?
So there were a few, and I'd say the biggest one that stands out was definitely my parents' decision to homeschool. And, 15, 16 years ago, before that, 20 years ago, that was a relatively new thing. Yeah. And that was some uncharted territory. And they just had the confidence to say, hey, I think that we can do things a certain way and, give you some opportunities if we choose this homeschooling route. And they did just that. And so first grade, I got pulled out of a private Christian school and began the homeschooling journey. And I loved it. I was super flexible. We created our own schedule. Schooling was great. We were on an awesome reading curriculum and the maths and sciences. And then, like I had mentioned before, had plenty of time to hang out with my friends and play all these different sports. And I just feel like it was a really flexible approach and just kind of started that journey of becoming a well-rounded child and young adult, and opened up a lot of the opportunities that came later once I'd kind of moved out of that 12 to 13 year span and eventually moved to Florida at that point for the high school years.
That's great. And we joked when we got together recently that, when I think of like a homeschool athlete that makes it big, Tim Tebow, when he grew up in Florida and obviously went on to a legendary career at University of Florida and a little bit in the NFL. I mean, he was a bit of a kind of an idol or somebody you looked up to, knowing he had that same path, right?
Most definitely. I first heard about Tim Tebow in the Westfield Public Library. I think I was 11 years old, and my parents were like, man, like there's this guy and he's making all these headlines in college football, and he's just so centered and rooted in his faith throughout that and so consistent in his messaging. As a young kid, like you really look up to someone like that because everyone wants what comes with this sport. It's this big platform. It's this big opportunity. There's a lot of eyes on you. I think a fewer amount of people are able to handle the things that come with that sport. And so to see how he navigated and managed that type of fame, publicity, and success at that young of an age and stayed so grounded through it. I mean, what better example could I learn from as a kid? And so even though I was not a football fan at the time, even though I was playing soccer, tennis, and some track, cross country, having him as a sports role model, I think, shaped my journey quite a bit.
So cool. So your family, I believe, moves to Austin, Texas, right, for a couple years, and then you end up moving just outside of Tampa. But as you alluded to, you were really more of a soccer player, right? weren't playing any organized football, very, very competitive soccer, some tennis. Maybe talk to us about where did football enter the picture for you? Because it was relatively, late in high school.
It was. So soccer was always my foremost passion when it came to sports. And I played a lot of different sports, but soccer was the biggest consistency. I started playing rec soccer out at the Hay-Big Fields when I was 5.
Yeah.
I then joined Carmel United, which is now Indiana Fire. Started playing pretty high-level club here in the area. When my family and I moved out to Austin, Texas, I played for Lone Star, which is one of the biggest programs out there in Texas. And then after a year, when we moved to Florida, I played for West Florida Flames and played high school soccer. And so, through that journey, kind of developed a real passion, a real desire to turn professional in soccer, but was still open-minded and very entrepreneurial in my approach. And so wanted to pursue these other passions when it came to tennis and a little bit of track, cross country, some of these other avenues. But, you start to get later in high school and your time to make a decision starts to, come to a finale. And so I thought soccer was going to be the best thing for me to pursue. And so I go into my senior season of soccer and I'm preparing for that. And I'm literally at practice and the football coaches come up to me like, hey, we've heard about you. We know that you have a big leg. Do you have any interest in joining the football team? Thinking to myself, like, no, I don't. But I didn't tell them that. I wanted to really reflect on
senior year of high school.
Yeah, senior year of high school. And I went home, I prayed about it, thought about it, talked to some friends and family. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to be 40, 50, 60, look back and have regrets that I didn't take advantage of an opportunity because I was scared to do it. And so I told the football coaches, sure, I'll do it, And so I joined the football team my senior year. I had 3 months to train. I went out to the local fields and I was kicking and punting a ball out there. My parents were out shagging for me. I get some buddies to go out there and I had no clue what I was doing. I was learning off YouTube videos and went into the season with no expectations in terms of performance, just a desire to have fun, do my best, and learn from that experience. And that's exactly what happened. I actually ended up starting and playing that entire season and had a relatively good season, ended up getting voted first team All-State. But mostly just felt like I learned from the environment, made some new friends, and conquered a fear by stepping into that environment. And so after that season, I put it out of my mind. I said, that was a great experience. I loved it. I had a good time, but it's time to focus.
First team All-State?
First team All-State.
Yeah, you're being kind of humble about that.
Well, at the time, I didn't know what that meant.
That's a big deal.
I didn't know what that meant. Here's this soccer player joining the football team. You get voted first team All-State. I had never grown up watching the sport. And so I don't even think that I fully comprehended what a big deal that was at the time. And so it was right back to the soccer journey. Ended up going overseas to Brazil and Canada and adventuring over there before I ended up coming back and joining USF.
So I want to talk about that because you, in essence, after you graduated high school, I took a gap year and didn't go right into college, but decided to play professional soccer. So how did you land in Brazil? I think you shared you were there for maybe 4 months, and then Canada. Maybe talk to us about that gap year, as I'll call it, and how you landed on playing in those two countries.
One of my best friends was a foreign exchange student. And he was at Newsom for his senior year, 1 year of school. And so we were seniors that same year. And we went through a full soccer season and I was sharing with him my desire to go professional, but not really knowing where to start. I think, at the time and even now, professional soccer opportunities are somewhat limited in the United States compared to overseas. And so I was telling him like, man, I really want to play professional soccer. I don't know how to start. And I remember this so vividly. It was like 10 o'clock at night. We were in my garage. We were playing ping pong. And he just stops and he's like, why don't you come back to Brazil with me? Stay with me and my family. And my dad is connected in Brazil. He'll get you set up with a couple soccer tryouts. And I think he offered that as an opportunity after hearing my passion for going overseas, but not fully thinking that I would take that opportunity. And I told him right then and there I'd do it. I was like, that sounds great. So I walked in the house. My parents were on the couch. I said, hey, I'm going to go to Brazil this coming year and try to play professional soccer. And they're like, okay, like we'll support you, go for it. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
great.
They were all in. They were very supportive. And so similar to when I was training for football, I had about a 5-month period where I was getting ready, training, and I went overseas and played for Ferroviarius and Grêmio São Carlos in Brazil.
But that wasn't set up before you moved. You kind of moved there with this buddy of yours who was from Brazil, and then got hooked up with the club, or did you get all that kind of in motion before you made the move?
Yeah, it was kind of a process talking with him and his dad at the same time I was training. They reached out to some of their contacts. They own a soccer training academy over there. And so they're connected with some coaches and said, hey, we have this American coming over. Would you be willing to give him a tryout and see what you think? And so that was kind of in the works as I was preparing to go over there, so that when I did get to Brazil, those tryouts were set up for me and I could hop right in.
Yeah. So you ended up staying there for, was it around 4 months? Did you make the team? How did that all pan out?
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to stay and train on the under 20 team. Okay. And the way that soccer works overseas is you join these training academies, and kind of similar to a college scholarship here, all expenses paid for. They pay for your meals, your travel, put you up in a residence of some sort. And I was like, man, this is a really cool opportunity. I have the opportunity to land a contract on the senior team, if I stay and do well for this under 20 team. But it was a little risky for me at the times, a lot of uncertainties there, staying in a foreign country and not having a guaranteed contract or salary. Yeah. And so that's when I pivoted a little bit. I ended up going to Canada to train with PSI to give it one more shot. They were going to send me to a Division 5 club in Germany. But very similar concept where Division 5 club in Germany, you're not making very much money. You're going to have a second job. And at that time, I felt like I had enough options in the U.S. that I would, transition back to the States and explore my options there.
Wow. So pretty formative stuff at 18, 19 years old to play professional soccer in both Brazil and Canada. And so after those experiences, talk to us about your decision next. I know you end up at USF, University of South Florida, there in Tampa, right? I believe walking on to the football team. So talk to us about that decision and sort of how that came about. I think you shared maybe you were just sending off films to different colleges, right? Seeing who might take a bite on you.
Well, you really find yourself at a crossroads, unbelievable experience going overseas and playing in Brazil and Canada. And I came back and felt like I had a few options. I had a lot of college scholarships to go play soccer for a school in the U.S. Was very entrepreneurial, like I had mentioned earlier. Back in high school, when I was going through the sports journey, I had been doing some private lessons for some kids, and then that ended up growing into pretty successful little operation that I had. And so I knew that I had the opportunity to pursue that full time if I wanted to. And so that kind of factored into my thinking as well. Like, hey, maybe we just take this entrepreneurial route and we just go for it.
Yeah.
And so I really spent some time deciphering between those different options and praying on it. And I felt like at that time I wasn't ready to give up my athletic career yet. I was like, man, I just want to pursue it a little bit longer. And so I said, hey, I can be an entrepreneur. I can pursue these things and still go to school and still play a sport. So I sent in my film to South Florida because it was right down the road from where we were living at the time in Tampa. And my sister was playing soccer there. Just like, we'll see. I'll send in the football film. Send in the soccer film, and we'll see what we get back. And had an opportunity to play either sport. So then again, you're at a crossroads. Like, what do I do? Like, do I stick with something that I have pursued basically my entire life?
Soccer.
And I've been so passionate about, or do I just make this radical shift and choose football after 1 year experience over a year ago in high school? And that was pretty scary to me, thinking about that football option. And it was pretty uncomfortable. And that's why I did it. Because I think we should challenge ourselves, and I think that we should pull ourselves outside of our comfort zones. And that ended up making all the difference to me. And I accepted a walk-on opportunity at USF and joined the team in the summer of 2019.
Wow. So where do you think that foresight or that just wisdom came from at 19 years old to, I think most 19-year-olds would want to go with what they know and what they know they're good at and comfortable with. But for you to say, you know what, I'm going to maybe choose the harder route, the one that's going to really stretch me outside my comfort zone and walk on, right, at USF for Florida. Where do you think like that decision-making at such a young age, like what factors led you to that decision?
That's a really good question. I don't think that there is one answer other than it's practice, like everything else. I think like one of Coach Freeman's mottos at Notre Dame that I learned later was choose hard. And I think maybe unknowingly I was doing that through my high school journey. When you go overseas and you place yourself in a completely different culture and environment, when you have to adapt to a new language and form these new relationships, you are building up your tolerance to discomfort. And so for me, shifting to football, was it scary? Absolutely. Was it uncomfortable? Yes. But I had spent my whole life sort of working up that tolerance to discomfort. And so it made that decision a little bit easier. And then I think another thing to keep in mind is make sure that you're thinking about the positives of your situation before you're thinking about the negatives. And there was a lot of ways that could have gone wrong or that I could have failed. There was also a lot of ways that it could have gone right and I could have succeeded. And so, you know, after looking at Tim Tebow's journey and praying on that, I just felt called to take that opportunity to play football because of the experiences that might happen. I just couldn't live with not taking advantage of those opportunities. I had to see what was going to happen and test those waters. And so that's what led me to make that decision. And then hindsight's 2020. You're looking back on it and you're like, oh, it all worked out exactly as it should have. But in those moments, those are difficult choices.
Wow. So, and I love that choose hard. That's great. So you walk on at USF to the football team. I know you spent a total of 4 years there. Talk to us about those first couple years as a walk-on, and I believe your last 2 years you were a scholarship. You know, you were offered a full scholarship. But just what was that experience like? Obviously, you probably enjoyed it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have kept doing it. But just what was that? And USF's not a Power 4 school, right? And we'll get into what comes after USF. But what were those 4 years like going from walk-on to, you know, scholarship and student athlete?
I think expectation management is a pretty important thing. And when I was going into USF and I was, you know, kind of restarting my football career, I was not thinking about going to the NFL. I was not thinking about playing pro. I was not thinking about going into USF and breaking records. I wasn't even thinking about going into USF and being the starting kicker. I just focused on a couple of things like, hey, I want to take advantage of this opportunity. I want to learn how the lifting program works in college. I want to get stronger. I want to get faster. I want to grow my mind. You know, I know that this is going to be a very demanding sport from a physical and a mental perspective. I want to come out of this tougher than when I started this journey. I want to learn about nutrition. You know, I want to learn about how this team culture works, how they have this hierarchy of command, the structure, that you need everyone on the same page to succeed. I was going in and I was focusing on these things that I think are oftentimes overlooked. I was never focusing on this, you know, go to the NFL, you know, use this as an opportunity to make money. It was none of that. And I think that's why I succeeded, because I never got caught up in the day-to-day and what was happening. Like, did I win a job? Did I make a kick? Did I miss a kick? It was always reframing things through a positive lens. So I go in as a walk-on with no expectation to start, and I end up starting, and it's a surprise, right? So then it's this new thing that I have to learn. Like, hey, I walked into this team, now I'm starting my freshman year, and all of a sudden I'm in a locker room before the game, season opener against Wisconsin, my first ever college football game. We're going out and playing this Big Ten team. That's terrifying. You know, I'm learning all of this for the first time. And it was so good for me, and it conditioned me. And I went through so many highs and lows through that first year, mentally, physically, performance-wise, highs and lows. And I just didn't quit. And I think, you know, if you're able to weather the storm, keep taking steps forward, again, you get to a certain point, you look back and you're like, my gosh, how far I've come, you know, how much I've learned. But it was a battle. Like there were ups and downs those first 2 years, and I was competing for spots. They'd bring in guys to replace me, and it was warranted. I had my performance problems.
Yeah.
But then I would just keep going, and I ended up getting put on scholarship my junior year, and I had a pretty good junior and senior season. And then that opened me up to an opportunity to grad transfer, and then that was a whole nother journey.
Yeah. I want to talk to you about that. So, how was the team? What was the record? Did you guys have winning seasons those 4 years you were at USF, or how was the program during those years?
So we went 4-8. Our coach got fired after the first year. Next year was COVID year. We went 1-8. Next year after that, we went 1-11, and then the following year, my senior year, we went 2-10. And so the coaches got fired again. So we had 2 coaching changes in the 4 years that I was there. We were there through probably the worst period of football in USF history. They've only been around for 50 years, but we set a record that we didn't want to set. And again, it's like, how terrible, how terrible you were there. And it's like, no, like I look back on that, I only have good memories.
Yeah.
I only have fond memories of the people that I met, the experiences that I went through, and how that shaped me as a man.
Thanks for joining us here on Talent Scout. We're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, so stay tuned. Most organizations hit a point where growth stalls. The message blends in, the site stops converting, pipeline softens. That's when I tell leaders about Prolific, the growth firm for purpose-driven leaders. Through full-service marketing and strategy, they clarify the story, rebuild your go-to-market, and drive sales. Most importantly, Prolific holds itself accountable to the metrics that matter to you. If you're ready for your next growth stage, learn more about Prolific at prolifichq.com. And I believe roughly the time frame you're at USF was like 2019 to 23, so somewhere around there. And as those of us in college athletics last few years know, and it was July of 21 when NIL was legislated, and you already alluded to it. I think you were doing some, whether it was kicking camps or training. Talk to us about being a student athlete kind of a couple years before NIL, and then once it became legal, right, to earn money off of your own name, image, and likeness. Just during that window at USF, some of the things that you were doing, or how that shifted just the off the field sort of opportunities as a student athlete.
So I'd mentioned that I was pretty entrepreneurial, that I'd created this private training company, and I actually ran that private training company the entire time that I was at USF. And so I would commute back and forth. When COVID rolled around, we took all of our classes online, and I just kept taking them online. So from 2020, 21, 22, I took all my classes online so I could drive back and forth to my neighborhood like 30 minutes away, and I could run lessons in the afternoon. So that was very important to me, was having an identity.
And these were like high schoolers that you were
high school, elementary age, high school, in that age range. And that was something that was very important to me, was not having my identity that was fully caught up in a sport, that I was someone off the field as well. And so, getting to share what I was learning as I was playing these high-level sports was really cool with all these kids that wanted to train. So at first, that was like, ooh, can I even do this?
Yeah.
Like pre-NIL?
Yeah.
And I could, because I had started that company before I'd gotten to USF, but I had to make very clear distinctions on keeping my NIL away from using that platform to benefit this little company. And then legislation gets passed. I think it was 21 around there. And it's like, okay, well, now it's legal that you can have your marketing deals, and you can have your sponsorships, and you can, print your t-shirts with a face on it or whatever. And, it's no problem. But nothing really shifted for me, since I'd already been running that company beforehand. Well, this landscape has been constantly changing. Yeah. And so already by the next year, it was like NIL was growing. All of a sudden, there's sort of these like pay-to-play opportunities, with these collectives developing. And that was something that we never really experienced at USF, just because of the size of school that we were and how new that was. But they were starting that process. So I go to grad transfer after our coaching staff had gotten fired, and a bunch of my buddies graduate and move on in 2023. And, I'm evaluating decisions in the portal, which was crazy because I had never been recruited before.
Yeah.
I had walked on to USF. So I go in the portal thinking I'm taking just a leap of faith and seeing what options are out there. And it's like all these schools are reaching out to me. I didn't even know how to handle it. It's like overwhelming.
Did you have an agent at the time?
No. This was like, no, you didn't really have agents. Like, you had trusted voices. Yeah. I had kicking coaches. Even my coaches at USF were awesome. My special teams coordinator, Coach DePrado helped me out with the recruiting process, but you didn't have agents that you hired to do that. So you're fielding phone calls yourself.
Yeah.
You're talking with these, college coaches, and it's a lot to handle, and you got to make a quick decision.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens so fast.
Yeah.
So I'm fielding these different calls. Within a week, I had 30 plus offers, and my top 3 were Georgia, Michigan, and Notre Dame.
Wow.
It's like, did not expect to even have any of this a week prior.
Yeah.
So then you're sorting through decisions that are going to massively impact your future, and you're operating on like a 2-week timeline of being recruited before they grab someone else.
Why do you think you were in such demand, especially after those 4 pretty down seasons at USF? Had your performance been peaking sort of towards the end, or was there just not a lot of kickers in the portal? And so,
yeah, a combination of factors. I think definitely the performance peaking. I had a pretty good 2 years, and then I think low kicker availability, and the portal wasn't quite as crazy as it is now, and so you had fewer options. And
you were able to get in the portal after 4 years at USF. You had a bonus year because of the COVID year.
Yeah,
Is that why?
COVID
Okay.
year. Yeah. So I had graduated from USF, and I think character speaks too. I think it's something that sort of gets overlooked occasionally when you're talking about professional sports because it's very performance based. It's like, we'll overlook a guy with maybe some minor issues if he can perform for us and make us millions of dollars. But it does matter. Like, character does matter. And I had a really good track record of working hard, and I had a lot of people in my corner vouching for me, not because I asked them to, but because they wanted to. And, I feel very blessed to have had that. And so a lot of people reaching out to different schools for me, generated a lot of attention, and then ended up choosing Notre Dame because of a combination of factors, the biggest 3 being faith-based university. Just felt like I was going to step into an environment and really experience a piece of history and get to create a legacy. The networking options, being an entrepreneur, the people that you meet, and the exposure that you're going to gain from that is unbelievable. And then the football itself, I mean, pretty cool program to play for.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was evaluating like, hey, I might have a chance to play in the NFL. I mean, this is already a lot of attention that I've gotten going in the portal that I didn't expect that. Like, maybe there is a shot to play in the NFL.
That was when the light bulb went off kind of during that portal. Yeah.
You play at Notre Dame, and it's like, they're going to get you that opportunity.
Yeah.
And so, multifaceted approach to choosing Notre Dame, and unbelievably glad that I did. Changed my life.
So that was Coach Freeman's. Would that have been his second year as head coach?
Year.
Okay. How did that season go? Remind me. It was before the national championship appearance season, right?
3-9. Again, I look back on, I'm like, this is the best season ever.
Yeah.
Like, it's just the people that you meet, and
I forgot he had that down of a season. 3-9. Okay.
I know, and it's crazy. Like, I have to get used to people judging seasons based on records and statistics, and I totally understand it.
Yeah. Because
the game's about winning, and you want to go to the college football playoffs, and you want to win national championships, and that's what it's about, and I get it. But that was our lives.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't just like, hey, you're trying to get to a national championship. Like, of course we were.
Yeah.
But Coach Free did not come in and start every meeting and say, hey, guys, the only goal we have this season is winning a national championship. And if we don't, this season's a failure.
Yeah.
I mean, he was so good at coming in and setting a tone and a message and being like, what are we going to do today? Because tomorrow's not guaranteed.
Yeah.
I know everyone says that, but that's real. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. So who are you going to be today? Like, we're going to build men, and we're going to do things the right way. And so, I guess from an outside perspective, we had a down year, but that was the most up year that I'd ever had. Record aside, just what I learned as a man and how I developed in that literally 6 months that I was there. Now thinking about it from summer through the end of the season, like, we could have 40 different podcasts talking about all the adventures and stories of the things that happened.
What would be, I know not to dwell on this, but I'm pretty fascinated with just Coach Freeman and his leadership, and you just observe. You told me off camera, he's a guy that walks the walk, right? He doesn't just say all the right things. He lives it out. I think he might be 40, maybe right at 40 now, but married, 6 kids, one of the hottest coaches in college football. And I know he's had a lot of NFL looks even, but if you were to summarize maybe one or two things, you already mentioned one earlier, choose hard, but what would be some key learnings that you took from just playing for a leader like that?
Coach Freeman will never demand something of someone else that he isn't willing to do himself. And I think that there is a lot of college football coaches out there who set this standard, who demand these things of these players, and yet if you analyze their lives, are failing in so many areas. And I say that not to judge those people, but to bring attention to what's truly important here. Coach Freeman never came in and demanded someone that he wasn't in the weight room showing himself that he's working hard, that he wasn't showing up early to meetings preparing, that he brought his family into the indoor facility and you could see the way that he treated his family, the way that he loved on his family. When someone like that is leading your program, when you talk about that concept of wanting to play for someone, that's it right there. And that still matters, even when you're coaching guys and they're, independently motivated by these different factors, whether it's playing time, whether it's money. And it's like, does the coach really matter? Like, he's just there to set the tone and, make the play calls and manage things. But it's like, does leadership matter anymore? It's like, it does. Like, you walk in every single day, you want to play for that guy. Like, I felt so blessed to have an opportunity to wake up and go into a team meeting and have that seat every single day when he was there. And so that is infectious. That comes from the top down.
Yeah.
Other people start to exhibit that behavior. A team starts to bring on that culture and bring on that identity. And so it's no surprise to me now that he's made the college football playoffs, that he was able to have such a good year this year.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't see someone do those things and then not have the results. But I think the cool thing about him is that he didn't focus on the results first.
Yeah.
He went in every single day and he was like, hey, we're going to maximize today.
Are you guys still in contact? I mean, even though you only played for him for 6 months, now that you're with the Colts, is he a relational guy where even if you stayed with him for one season, he's going to be available and accessible?
Absolutely. That was one of the coolest things about him, is he didn't have a secretary walk into his office and talk to him at any point. He felt like a human being. He felt like a friend. Like, you knew, it's like, hey, your coaches can't be friends. Yeah, of course. There's some boundaries there.
Yeah.
You know that he has a job to do. You know that he has a duty to fulfill. But I always felt like he had my best intention in mind. That's rare.
Yeah.
In the professional environment, and I would consider college football a professional environment, and that environment is very rare for people to be so intentional about making you feel like they have your best interest at heart.
Wow. Now, I got to ask you, you spent basically a fall at Notre Dame. Do you have to take classes? I know you'd already graduated. Were you working towards a master's? How did that work for those that are curious?
Yeah, so my experience, I guess, was a little bit different than Carson Beck's. When he was like, I think it was 2 years ago I took my last class. I took 3. I took a grad level course and a couple others, and they were great experiences. Like, the professors that were there were very entrepreneurial, and I learned a lot from it. I did not have the same course load as someone that was pursuing a master's degree, but I did go to class and I did show up and I did do my work. And it was fun because I did feel like I was still partaking in a college experience. And then it wasn't just, a mercenary college football player that's there for a year and like, hey, just, help the team. It was like, no, there was so many things that I got to experience off the field and partake in when I was there. It was a very holistic experience being a part of Notre Dame.
Well, I want to jump ahead to how you arrived at the Indianapolis Colts, the NFL experience. I mean, those 6 months at Notre Dame, I know you met your wife, Corbin, soccer player, professional soccer player now. I believe some connections with your special teams coach, kind of help pave the way to the Colts. But so you finish up at Notre Dame, undrafted, but went to the combine, right? Talk to us about how you ended up getting signed by the Colts.
Yeah, Brian Mason was my special teams coordinator at Notre Dame for about 2 months. He recruited me there and then took the Indianapolis job. And he called me when he took the Indianapolis job, and he said,
special teams coach for the Colts.
Okay. Yeah, special teams coordinator for the Colts. Notre Dame at the time brings me in, calls me, says, hey, so I'm leaving to take the Colts job, but I want you to stay in Notre Dame. This place is for you. Like, you were meant to go here. And again, like, one of those authentic moments, you're like, man, like, that just means a lot.
Yeah.
So I ended up going through Notre Dame and didn't have the season that I wanted to have, but overall, like I was saying, had an incredible experience. Did well enough that I had broken a couple records and I'd sort of generated a little bit of buzz. And so I was able to sign with an agent coming out of that year and sort of set my sights on the NFL, which was still, very new and very daunting to me at the time. And so, season ends in December, you move into preparation for the coming year and have about 3 months to prepare before the combine, the pro day and everything. And had a great experience with training. get to the combine and sort of left it in God's hands. I remember writing in my journal, and I was like, you know what? I'm here to make a difference as a person, be the best person I can be. I hope this football thing goes well while I'm here. And then just, felt very at peace in that moment and ended up just crushing it, having an incredible combine. And that really was what put me on the radar for all of the NFL teams. And so I thought at that point I might get drafted. I was in conversation with Mace at the Colts at that point again. And he said, hey, we would love to bring you in as a priority free agent. You might get drafted. And if you do, we're so happy for you. But if you end up kind of falling through the cracks, let us know. We'd love to have you here. So I went through the draft days and I didn't, it was very up in the air. And I was fielding calls from different teams and everyone's kind of figuring out what they're going to do. Ended up kind of going down to that last day, 7th round pick, don't end up getting a call. And so first one on my phone, I pick up my phone, it's Mace again. And I was like, I'm coming. Let's do this thing. And
he called you?
He called me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're in contact with you through the whole process.
Yeah.
I was so excited to go in and just learn and just be a part of that environment. Very similar to the mentality I had at USF and at Notre Dame, where I'm not going in with any preset expectations.
Yeah.
I do have one expectation for myself. That's to do my best every single day and to maximize my opportunity. But it's not contingent. My success is not contingent on winning a starting job, making a certain amount of kicks, performing subjectively this well. So I just went in. I had an amazing experience, and it took me by surprise. When I was at Notre Dame, I thought that was going to be the pinnacle of my sports career.
Yeah.
How do you replace that? You can't. That's a once in a lifetime opportunity. I thought the NFL would be very corporatized, very job like, and that a lot of the joy would be taken away. And I was really pleasantly surprised with what a great experience I've had so far.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed being a part of the Colts. I loved joining the team last year and just learning about that process and being reunited with Mace and meeting new teammates. And I think that's what allowed me to have some of the success that I had at the beginning of last year when I ended up getting retained by the Colts was just they knew that they had a guy who was just going to work hard and he was going to give it his best. And he wasn't going to raise a lot of concerns.
Yeah.
And I think that mentality was what allowed me to stick with the Colts at the beginning of last year.
So spring of 24 was the draft that you were referencing. You end up getting signed as a priority free agent, right? That summer. But your first season, since we're just wrapping up your second season in the NFL, first season it was a little bit, up and down, right? I mean, Colts, Jets, Chiefs, getting cut, practice squads, actually being on the Super Bowl. Didn't win, unfortunately, but on that Chiefs team that went to the Super Bowl, lost the Eagles, all in your first season in the NFL. Talk to us about just that experience, that ride, that roller coaster.
I thought that I'd experienced about everything that I could in my journey with playing soccer and going overseas and USF and Notre Dame. And then I was surprised at all the things that happened last year. I joined the team, like you said. I ended up getting cut and then re-signed because Matt had gotten injured, our kicker.
Matt Gay, yeah.
Yeah. And played the first game, season opener. Insane. The emotions that are involved in that. Went back down to practice squad when Matt was healthy, was on practice squad for 3 weeks. Had an opportunity to go over to the Giants and play. Turned that down to stay. Remained on practice squad, bouncing on and off practice squad for 4 weeks. Went to New York, got a tryout, got signed to practice squad, got elevated for a game, played in a game, dropped back down to practice squad, taken by the Chiefs, played in 2 games for the Chiefs, hit a game winner, injured myself the next day, got put on IR, went to the Super Bowl. Came out again as an undrafted or unrestricted free agent.
Yeah.
So it's like,
wow.
who plans that?
Yeah.
I experienced more in that. I literally experienced everything that there was to experience in that first year. And the NFL will surprise you. There's always crazy situations that pop up, but it literally prepared me for anything. Getting cut multiple times, playing on different teams, game winner, injury, Super Bowl, so many things in that first year. My plan is to write a book about it at some point. I'm like, I just need to find a way to summarize that 1 year to tell that story. But I think I was, like I had mentioned before, conditioned for the uncomfortable based on my prior experiences to handle the majority of that journey with grace and just understand that was all part of the plan. That was all part of the process.
Yeah.
Saves you a lot when your definition of success is not contingent on, like I mentioned, being this kicker, having these statistics, but is instead on maximizing every opportunity that comes your way.
It's great. This past season, more adversity. I mean, you're signed, I think, before the season starts to a 2-year deal, and start the year as the starter, right, for the Colts, and had a game winner versus the Broncos. I think I was at that game, and then I don't know if it was the next game or shortly after versus the Raiders. End up sustaining a hit, tear your ACL, MCL, right, and have surgery a couple weeks later. Now you're in recovery. Talk just about just this past year and continuing to just persevere and be resilient and navigate these headwinds as you were kind of settling in as the lead guy for the Colts.
Yeah, you'll see me over here kind of stretching out my leg.
Yeah.
That's still recovering from the ACL, MCL. But it was a lot of framing your perspective. I was very blessed to become the guy, for the Colts and to start the season the way that we did, and was enjoying that so much week to week with the way that we were preparing, the way that we were performing. It's really nice to see all of your hard work come to fruition. Like, you work so hard, you put in so many hours, and so that was happening week to week. And it was never about recognizing what had happened the week before. It was all about preparing for the next week. And then an injury happens, and it's a complete mindset shift because you go from having a very important job and performing every single week to having a radically different job. Like, I could not do anything that I was doing before. In an instant, it was changed. And so you have to then figure out, how do I shift my perspective to find all of the positives and all of the silver linings that are in this situation? There is an adjustment period. That's not something that you do overnight.
Yeah.
But in football, there's a lot of injuries. You can still make a difference to the team. There's a lot of guys going through it. And so very quickly, I tried to shift my perspective to, hey, I'm not going to provide the same type of value that I was before from a physical perspective, but there's still value to be provided here. I'm in the facility every single day. I'm recovering. I'm rehabbing. I'm learning about my body. I'm learning about the physiology of what's happening. This is an opportunity to strengthen my body, strengthen my mind, strengthen myself emotionally, spiritually, and also pull my teammates up and still be a part of this culture as we move forward. And so it wasn't as hard of an adjustment as you might think. You might think, if your identity is caught up, and who am I? I'm an NFL kicker. I am the guy who gets points for the Colts. I'm the guy that does this, and then all of a sudden it's gone in an instant. It's like, no, my identity is a man of Christ. I'm a teammate first. My job is to pull others up. My job is to make a positive impact wherever I go. And so I was, blessed to be around good people that helped me shift to that perspective fast. And then I felt like, for the most part, was able to maximize the rest of the season as best as we could. And then you experience team adversity. You do so well, you go 7-1, and then all of a sudden more injuries happen. Things start crumbling. The sky's falling. Things are getting written on social media. Can you still have presence of mind to just cut through that? In those moments. And I think sports is one of the best teachers that you'll ever experience. You just have to be willing to learn those lessons.
That's such great perspective and wisdom at such a young age. When can we expect? When do you expect to be back to 100%?
Well, things have been going great so far. We have an unbelievable training staff at the Colts. Unbelievable surgeon, Dr. Brian Cole in Chicago, did a very good job. Feeling super strong. I'm in a strength phase right now where I'm squatting and working on growing that muscle back. The next phase will be running. The next phase after that will be kicking. All of that is on a pretty quick timeline. It's hard to know exactly because everything is very dependent on how your body reacts to the new stimulus that it's getting. So you have these objective timelines of 4 to 6 months, 6 to 8 months, 6 to 9 months, 9 to 12. But it's really very dependent on how your body's reacting to the new stimulus that's getting thrown at it. So far, everything's been going according to plan, and my plan is to be back by OTAs, kicking again in some sort of capacity, and then be at completely full strength by training camp this coming year.
Wow, that's amazing. OTAs is April?
April, mid-April.
Well, to wrap things up, Spencer, this has been great, and I think just as you're such an authentic, guy and leader, and it's amazing what you've experienced already at such a young age and your perspective on life. Maybe share your best piece of advice for someone out there listening who's earlier in their career.
Yeah, I think I'd like to approach it twofold. I think my overall general piece of advice not just in sports, would be to anchor yourself to something that is deeper than whatever you're going through. Because that could be sports, it could be business, it could be a variety of other things. For me, that's my faith. That's my rock and my stability and how I'm able to navigate all these things. And then a sports-specific one, since we've talked about that so much, would be when I reflect on my journey of competition, always being in competition the entire way, whether it was soccer, football, always competing against these other people, right? There was one consistency through that entire journey, and that was myself. I was competing against myself every single day. So the people that are in the sports field, or again, this kind of extends outside of that to business as well, competing against yourself every single day, that's the only consistency that you're going to have.
Yeah.
Stop caring so much about the outside events that you have no control over what's happening, and just care about what you're doing on a daily basis to become a better person.
Yeah.
And I think it relieves a lot of stress, and you find a lot more joy in that process.
Man, that's a word. That's a great word. I could end on that. I do have one more question. I like to ask every guest this question as the last question, because I think the answers can be very different. How do you, Spencer Shrader, define success?
Oh man, I'd like to define success as the world is a better place when I left than when I came in.
It's great. Leave your campsite better than you found it, right?
Exactly.
Well, hey, this has been a pleasure having you on. Excited for your recovery. Excited to be rooting for the Colts this next season. You guys did have a great start. I think you'll get it back. Maybe real quick, longest kick in a game and longest kick in practice.
Longest kick in a game, record-breaking kick at Notre Dame was 54 yards, and then broke that in preseason when I was with the Colts, 56 yards. And then Lucas Oil Stadium pregame of the Raiders game, the game that I got injured, 70-yarder.
A 70-yarder?
70-yarder.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like 60, 65 is becoming standard in the NFL these days.
It's crazy.
Well, I'm sure you'll get back there. Maybe you'll hit a 75-yarder or something like that.
Would be awesome.
Appreciate you being a guest on today, and just excited for what the future holds for you.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.